World War I ended on November 11, 1918, nearly a century ago. The 4-year period of fighting, killings, famine, and illness that plagued Europe was finally finished, but it had left the world with severe scars, and the survivors with a legacy of terror. However, the conflict also gave rise to advancements in a wide range of fields. As a result of the necessity, people's ingenuity was stimulated and various things, and technology were created that are still in use today. So let's look at the 6 incredible inventions from World War I now. Like and subscribe to the channel to receive new content every day. 1. Industrial fertilizers. Industrial fertilizers appeared at the time of the First World War, but not for the purpose of making something germinate, but for the manufacture of explosives. According to the Nautilus article, shortly before the war, German chemists Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch developed a process to convert atmospheric nitrogen into a biologically available form, ammonia, using high pressure and temperature. This allowed Germany to produce artificial nitrates to create explosives such as TNT. This production gave more autonomy to the Germans, since, before, the nitrates came from Chilean guano deposits. Guano is the name given to the feces of birds and bats that concentrate a large amount of nitrogen, which produced a limited supply. So when war broke out, Germany only had enough natural nitrates to last about 6 months. But with the new chemical process, they were able to create explosives much longer. And it was this same process that ended up being adopted for the manufacture of nitrate-based fertilizers, which sustain industrial agriculture on a large scale today. 2. Drones. Currently, more than ever, drones are out there in the air for the most diverse functions. But they didn't just appear, being one of the incredible inventions of the First World War. In this period, in addition to firepower, engine powers increased, as did altitude speeds and bomb loads. That's when the idea of the first unmanned flying object also came about. At that time, American inventor Charles Kettering designed an unmanned flying bomb, which could hit a target at a distance of 65 kilometers, stop and dive to the ground. However, the first test flight, which took place on October 2, 1918, failed because the aircraft climbed too much, stopped and crashed. The following models were not considered very reliable to be used, but, in any case, the idea of the drone was already consolidated. 3. Air traffic control. The radio communicator system had already made its debut before the war, but great progress was made during it as it was an extremely important tool for military aviation communications. According to Nautilus, the United States Army installed the first two-way radios on airplanes even before the country's involvement in the war. By 1916, technicians could send a radio signal over a distance of 225 kilometers, and radio telegraph messages could be exchanged between airplanes in flight. At the end of that same year, projects began for helmets equipped with built-in microphones and headphones. The following year, it was the first time that a person's voice was transmitted by radio from an airplane flying to a flight controller on land. This system was essential for battles, but it also became the basis for today's air traffic technology. 4. Portable X-rays. Medical services on the battlefields were not easy in World War I. 1914, the first year of that war, was marked by extreme difficulties in this area, but armies quickly tried to develop sophisticated systems to solve the most varied injury problems during the period with some innovations. One of these was the Thomas splint, an artifact used to immobilize limbs, usually broken legs, which had a huge impact on survival rates in a time before antibiotics. Before that, the percentage of deaths resulting from complications of femur fractures, for example, was very high. In addition, blood banks were developed, thanks to the use of sodium citrate to prevent blood from clotting and becoming unusable, allowing transfusions on the battlefield another innovation that saved many lives. However, perhaps one of the most important medical innovations of the time was the ability to be able to bring diagnostic tools to the forefront. But there was a piece of equipment that was too big and delicate to be transported: the X-ray machine. With the aim of making transport and use more practical for medical service on the battlefields, Polish scientist Marie Curie, who lived in Paris, raised funds in France to develop small mobile X-ray machines. The equipment was then installed in French army cars and trucks. She herself drove some of these vehicles to the front lines, with the help of her 17-year-old daughter Irene, and working at casualty removal stations using X-ray machines to locate fractures, bullets, and shrapnel. 5 sanitary pads. Did you know that feminine sanitary napkins weren't exactly invented for the purpose of helping women on those days of the month? At first, the item was created to staunch the blood of major gunshot wounds during the First World War. As the story goes, in 1914, Ernst Mahler, the head of a small American company called Kimberly-Clark, visited pulp and paper mills in Germany, Austria, and Scandinavia, observing a new cellulose material called cellulocotton. The material impressed Ernst as it was about 5 times more absorbent than cotton and, when mass-produced, was half the price. Upon returning to the U.S., Mahler registered the material, and when the United States entered the war in 1917, Kimberly-Clark began producing surgical dressings from it. However, the dressings caught the attention of Red Cross nurses, who began to use them for their own personal hygiene, and the custom became known. So when the war was over, Kimberly-Clark took advantage of surplus bandages from the military and the Red Cross to create the first commercial sanitary napkins under the name Kotex. The idea was very innovative at a time when women used scraps of fabric for their hygienic needs at that time of the month. 6 ultraviolet lamps. The starvation and seclusion of the Germans during the war led to a very significant increase in cases of rickets, a disease caused by a lack of vitamin D, calcium, or phosphate that leads to weakening of the bones. By the winter of 1918, half of the children of Berlin were suffering from this condition, as well as showing much weakness and apathy. At the time, the cause of the disease was not known, but a Berlin doctor named Kurt Hulczynski noticed that the children were also very pale, so he decided to experiment with some of them. To do this, he held several sessions in which he placed 4 children under the light of mercury quartz lamps that emitted ultraviolet light. Then came the results. The treatment worked, as the children's bones became stronger. That's because ultraviolet light causes the skin to produce vitamin D, which is necessary for both bone health, immune response factors, and even mood. Tell me what you think. Like and subscribe to the channel, and check out the suggested video. I'm pretty sure you'll find something interesting and valuable.